think it just goes
Okay,
live.
yeah, we're live. I got a live thing on my
Yeah,
screen.
back in the old days when I started, they used to have this like those little retro things where they'd go count and go like five, four, and it had that little thing that
Right.
spun and it would say
Yeah, the
counting down.
crosshairs. Right.
Yeah, that was kind of I guess it's part of that. What is material design they call this now? What is Google's
Right. It's
Well, hello
flat
everyone. This
flat
is
design.
season 3. I don't know why I'm calling it season 3. It just sounded kind of hip and cool. Hangouts with James Fee. Got Brian Timoney here with me. Hey Brian, how you doing?
Very well, James. We have Arizona-like weather here in Denver, Colorado on the first Friday in February.
It's 81 degrees here. What is it there?
I think we're in the high 60s.
Ooh, oof. Well, you're supposed to get a lot of rain or snow coming, right? Isn't there like a storm coming your way?
I think that went to the north of us, I believe.
Oh, oh well.
You have to
Global warming.
follow anything Colorado weather related at weather5280.com. That's my pitch for today.
Yeah, 50. Yeah, I unfortunately I follow that, and they're always saying how great the weather is in Colorado. Though their
Outstanding.
definition of great is a little bit different than my definition of great. My definition of great is 75 and it's clearer. Their definition of great is snow, so they can go up to the mountains and skip work.
Right. And we have the International World Cup Skiing Championships going on at Vail and Beaver Creek for the next week or so. So
Is that the
the
one Bodie Miller like gashed his
wiped
leg
out.
open?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
I saw that on the internet. It said gruesome, don't click. So I clicked, and it was even worse than I thought. I was like, whoa, what happened to hiding this stuff?
Well, there's ski edges. It's basically speed skating on razor blades, really long razor blades going downhill on ice, right?
Yeah. Well, in the old days, right, they'd say this footage may be disturbing to some viewers, and they'd show you like some guy just falls and hits his head, and you'd be like, oh. Now it's like when they say that, you better sure as heck believe them because it's like MASH, but the movie MASH, not the TV show MASH.
Right. The most disturbing thing guys like us saw growing up was the agony of defeat on the wide world of sports, promotion
That poor
trailer.
guy. He was like from like Croatia or Slovakia or somewhere.
Yeah, the key is don't bail out of your ski jump. That's the lesson.
You're committed, just go.
Right, exactly.
Just point that. Oh, I mean, well, gravity takes care of the rest, right?
Yes, just get your skis up in that one formation.
So you were a big Google Earth user back in the day. I don't know if you still are. Well,
Yes,
maybe you weren't, but your clients were.
yeah, my clients absolutely are. It's the most, you could say Google Earth is the most successful standalone interface that we've seen in the mapping industry, insofar as the initiative end users took to learn how to use it. And so, in that, I mean, here we are, it hasn't been improved in 8 years, and it's still one of the top two or three interfaces that people either know how to use or don't mind learning how to use, just
Yeah.
because that experience was so immersive when it first came out.
So tell me this. So now Google stops charging for Google Earth Pro. Does that does that signify opening up and people are going to embrace this thing even more, or Google Earth is just a sideshow on the great Google trained automated cars and Google Glass?
Well, my first thought was, our colleague Brian Flood at Arc to Earth in New Jersey. I'm convinced he'll do the Jersey thing and just keep charging people $400 a pop for free software. That might be an interesting business model. My one thought is because Google bought Skybox, right, the
Hmm.
satellite company, and the thought of, will the general public ever see Skybox imagery for, how accessible is that imagery going to be? Or is that a thing that's going to be used for other in-house revenue streams? And I have no idea, but it certainly marks their presumed exit from kind of the geo enterprise market.
Yeah. Well, So what does it mean for us as providers of spatial services?
Well, it means if you have customers who tend to email you or call you on the phone, then those are the kinds of customers Google's not interested in spending a lot of time with. Um, and I question how much this kind of gold rush, if you will, to try and pick up former Google customers. Um, I question how successful that's going to be. And again, I'm just a third party sitting in Denver. I have no specialized inside knowledge.
You're just a guy.
I'm just a guy, and I'm a little disappointed, James, that you haven't announced the URS ACOM strategy for scooping up Google Enterprise customers.
The only thing I can say about that is we are a Google Maps for Work Platinum something provider.
Oh, so you've already gotten the good housekeeping seal of approval, huh?
Right, yeah, just send your emails to james.m.fee@aecom.com and I will gladly help you along the spatial IT trail.
There you go. There you go. And as long as we're self-promoting, I have tiles and I have PDFs. That's what I can offer to any end user. So
what about Excel to access?
Excel VBA access, and I saw Microsoft is now giving away their Power BI add-in for Excel. So
Are they really?
yeah, like 3D charts and whatnot.
Oh, you use it?
No, but it had one of the screenshots had like the old virtual Earth globe with 3D bars protruding out.
Uh, if people still ask for that?
It looks cool, James. Yeah, you have a heat map on a globe with the protruding 3D bars, and whatever you're proposing will get approved. I guarantee
Yeah.
it.
I prefer it when they do the 3D charts and they kind of tilt it so you can't actually see that
Right?
sales have
Yeah.
declined.
Don't make any visual comparison, please. Just
Yeah,
just take
sales
our
haven't
word for it.
declined. Just look at the forced perspective. It looks the same.
Right.
The tops are level all the way across. So I assume you saw Esri's little play for Google Maps customers. They have a whole website out. It's right on their front page at Esri.com. They're looking for. I think to me. Have you seen it?
Yeah, and like the word that kind of popped out there was relationship. Like we have a relationship, and you're like, what? Who called who? And I kind of pictured, the analogy I thought of when was like Google is the senior executive who returns to the office and has a pile of those while you were out slips. Call this person, get back to that person. And Google just scoops it up and all those slips and turns to somebody and say, like, who wants to take care of this? I have
Yeah.
zero interest. So I don't know what the Esri's relationship, that word that popped out. Although you have to give credit where credit's due, I think CartoDB was the first one to have their pitch up on their website as their viable alternative.
Yeah.
And then and I think Boundless was pulling up the rear a couple days ago. They were about a week late on their marketing pitch of scooping up all these theoretical customers that exist somewhere, I suppose.
So, well, okay, that brings up the big question. Do people actually use this product for business? I mean, obviously I've seen on Twitter people are complaining, but are they complaining because they use it and they make money off of it? Or are they complaining because they just don't want, Esri and a couple others to control the market? They like Google being there.
No, well, one thing about the enterprise software space how many of these clients who signed up for Google, 2, 3, 4 years ago, how many of them use it? Is it now a line item that they kind of forgot why they originally purchased it, right?
Yeah.
And what what how critical to its everyday operations are the Google services, other than, hey, we needed a license because we wanted to use tiles internally, something very basic, or we're doing routing, or we threw a couple tips up on Google's server infrastructure.
Yeah.
um, but with all the different flavors and naming conventions, um, the enterprise offering was a bit confusing, to be honest with you.
Well, I noticed, at least from a Google Earth Enterprise perspective, Google Earth Enterprise always seemed to do better with DoD and realtors, investment companies looking to, something with land.
Right.
It wasn't really something that, GIS people ever used. So that's, I think, why that was successful outside of the, quote, Esri ecosystem, because Esri never really had a product at the time. Looking at their page, clearly they're pushing their services to be equal to Google Earth Enterprise. Knowing what we know about both those products now, seems logical that you could use Esri to replicate that. Not sure about the ease of use, but functionality-wise, I can't see there being much difference. Google Earth Enterprise was something that was very expensive. It wasn't $400 a year or whatever. So.
Right, and how much of that was just a imagery management solution,
Yeah.
and how much of the attraction of of Google was, hey, here's another way to access large amounts of imagery that's really accessible, user friendly, and and how the whole imagery thing plays out, right? Like, everyone wants the backdrop, everyone wants the most recent stuff.
Yeah.
How are people going to pay? How much will people pay for that? And
does anyone actually pay for that anymore, though? Isn't that kind of included, like free aerial image with purchase of ArcGIS license?
Right, and it's a huge issue, because I saw there was some investment website that was pushing Digital Globe, and the huge market that awaits for Digital Globe imagery, and now they can do 50 centimeter, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, wow, I've heard all these same sales pitches before. Oh, we're going to have agricultural monitoring, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, once you get out of defense, how big were the customers for imagery?
So pre-Great Recession, it was great, right? Everybody was excited, thinking the future would be wonderful. Post-Great Recession, they don't build houses here in Arizona anymore. I don't know about Colorado, but there's plenty of excess inventory still around.
Our construction boom is in downtown Denver. We have Dubai-like levels of cranes going on.
Yeah, I mean that happens in Arizona too. But you don't see that growth out where you had these cities just saying, "Hey, we're going to be 1 million people, and we're 50, 60 miles outside the center core."
Right.
So sprawl seems to be dead, and that was what you needed aerial imagery for. If you're going to just knock down an old building in the urban core and build it up straight, you you don't need that functionality.
Right. Yeah. So Mapbox is really trying to make a push, at least in their marketing materials, for the imagery relationships they have. So it's interesting to see, are we selling tools, are we selling platforms, or at the end of the day, are we just selling the most detailed, most recent imagery backdrop for whatever map you're going to make?
Well, I think the answer is yes to all those, depending on the customer. If I'm trying to figure out how many automobiles are being imported from Japan, and I can get up-to-date satellite imagery every day. I can look at the, LA and San Diego and San Francisco and see the cars and count the cars coming in off
Well, it is
boats.
funny. Yeah, it is funny how, 2 years ago there were startups, just counting cars in Home Depot parking lots, right?
Hmm.
And now with, there's been such an interesting advance in kind of that imagery recognition and automated feature extraction using machine learning, and the idea of, in 2 short years counting cars in parking lots is a prosaic application of the imagery, and every that's information that is more and more readily available. And that's actually one of the areas on the business end that I'll be doing more work in 2015. Is, we have imagery is becoming more ubiquitous, video feeds, security cameras, and can you audit in an automated fashion, extract useful data, count data, how many people are in this video camera scene, what's the, sidewalk surveys made with iPhone video, those kinds of workflows where you're using these very advanced algorithms to kind of generate spatial data, public works type stuff. That's just been a really costly and really long, drawn out time periods to get some expensive engineering firm to, set up a 2-week survey just to tell you how many cars go through an intersection, right?
Yeah.
That should be a fairly cheap, fairly rapid set of information to develop. So I think there's a lot of interesting applications there, and that's why I'm so intrigued / interested in the Mapillary project. Have you
Hmm.
heard of that?
Yeah.
The kind of OpenStreetMap equivalent for Google Street View. And what's interesting to me is the value of that is they have some feature extraction algorithms going on in the back end where they're already pulling all different types of street signs out of the imagery that people upload to Mapillary. And the idea of those automated tools, those automated extraction routines, if I'm a municipality or small gov who, surveys signs once every 4 or 5 years, and all I have to do is take pictures, and this service will automatically spit back which signs are still up, what they are, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's an immediate value proposition versus, hey, contribute data just because it's the right thing to do. It's the idealistic thing to do.
Yeah. Well, let me know how it goes at the end of 2015.
Well, is it going to be a 2015 thing or a 2017 thing? I mean, we've been talking. We're 10 years into the web mapping revolution, and at the end of the day, where has the money been made?
Um, I don't know. I've spent a lot of money. I know that. Spent a lot of money, a lot of time, but all I got in
Please,
my
somebody
hand.
on IRC, please tell us.
Oh, they're all bitter. I'm not doing IRC, but I think I'm gonna. Everyone's giving me like a little hassle for not having IRC. So next week we have Paul Ramsey on, so we'll do IRC because apparently anyone who watches this is over 40 and doesn't know how to converse on something other than IRC. I don't know, but anywho, so I'm actually getting more into Esri, if you can believe that. I
Yeah,
just did,
I saw you live tweeting your Arc server installation.
yeah. So I've got
I thought that was
PostGIS installed. That
that
worked
that
out perfectly.
Yeah, talking to Postgres.
Yeah, so so far so good. Knock on wood. It's a lot easier not having to set up SDE anymore. That's how long it's been since I've actually set up an ArcGIS server.
Now, are you doing direct read and write, or are you just doing read out of
Read and write.
Postgres? Oh, there you
I'm
go.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Everyone tells me that read and write when 10.3 is perfect, and you shouldn't worry about it. So we'll see.
You
I'm a
got, you
little
got.
nervous.
Do you have any FME in the middle there,
I'm
directing
trying not to
traffic?
have anything other than just Esri and PostGIS right now. Just to make sure this all works without any problem. I need to know. I've got a couple clients that are Esri users, and they're trying to figure out how to use it with PostGIS, and they've had a lot of trouble. They're using third-party applications or FME server to connect back and forth. And everyone's telling me, "Hey, 10.3, this is when you jump on the boat, the bandwagon, 10.3." So here I am. My biggest problem has been that I'm not used to Windows Server 2012 and I think I told you this earlier, the sliding tiles and trying to figure out how to configure the damn thing. That's the hardest part is Windows, which maybe tells us how stable
Well,
PostGIS is.
well, James, the fact that for the last 3 minutes you've been saying server this, server that, clearly you're not with the trends now. None of us, we don't need the server anymore. If
Well,
I
I
could
don't need the
do
server 100% of the time, but sometimes I got a client that needs the server. I mean, who am I to say that's the wrong way of doing it?
right with turf, I can do my hexagonal binning inside the browser.
Well,
So,
for those
what else?
clients that want to do it that way, believe me, I would love to be able to do everything
I
with
don't even know
JavaScript.
what other type of client is there. I don't know. I don't know.
It's
But
the client that I got myself back into when I joined URS.
like the
The one
Godfather 3. Every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
I came back and everything was exactly the same as I left it 10 years ago. Whoops. No, but in all fairness, I mean, I give Esri a pretty hard time. Maybe a little too much at times, but it's been interesting to see 10.3 is much more stable than. I guess I last used 9 or 10 was the last time I did this, so it's been a while.
And also the idea of from just in all seriousness, the idea of the customers understanding precisely what is it that they need to have done in a server environment, and that's and and the idea of too many mid-career people in geospatial are disgruntled systems administrators who had no intention of getting into server management, and we want to make maps all day, and now we're managing complicated back-end infrastructure, and the idea of you learn just enough to be dangerous but not enough to make the money what a real systems administrator would.
Yeah, so it's a very good point, right? Because 15
But
years
why,
ago,
why are you setting it up, right? You're a perfect example, right? Why are
because
you
my IT
doing
staff
that?
doesn't want to touch it, right? They're like, "What is this?" They'll set up PostGIS, but I kind of want to do that myself just because
Right,
I'm
right.
graybeard. But
Yeah.
they'll set that up for me. But when it comes to ArcGIS, they're like, "Here's the downloads, here are the keys, best of luck." Don't ruin it. And so on the desktop, for AECOM URS, like they just push this thing. I don't know how the magic of Windows, and they push out a
Right.
new image and it magically appears. So they understand how to do this from an enterprise level on desktop, but server, it's like a work group. Like you just set up your own server and away you go. Now, I guess the theory is that's why Esri's pushing so hard for everybody to use ArcGIS Online, because theoretically you don't need to set up servers and you can just use this mythical Esri cloud product. But I don't know. Internally behind a firewall, sometimes you still have to stand up a server.
No, absolutely, and you know the value proposition of the online platform is, you know, imagine the phone calls and emails Esri gets from all the different ways a server installation can go wrong, right?
Oh,
Unlimited.
totally. A couple of years, well, 10 years ago probably, I was dealing with Oracle and Esri about SDE, and Esri was blaming Oracle, and Oracle was blaming
Right,
SDE.
right, and and but at the same time, you know, it's you get a cloud platform that may or may not be any cheaper than running your own hardware in house and with a different set of functionality. Um, yeah, I and well, let's circle back in the conversation. So one of the great things about Google Earth, one of the most unappreciated pieces of the Google Earth interface was slash is
Oh boy.
the the network link functionality to be able to stream KML
Yeah.
into the interface in a fairly generic way that you had a wide range of choices of how you were going to feed it KML and the ability to handle not only streaming data but also, you know, big chunked up data that you figured out how to stream as the user zoomed around. So the idea of getting around those size limits of how much data you can push down to the user, how much you can stream to the user. And now, I mean, somebody just mentioned it on Twitter, you know, the whole other kind of you know, WebGL stuff where you can just put in, you know, tremendous volumes of data to the browser and it can work with data sets that are big enough that cover a vast majority of use cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, Google Earth, they had no, I want to say they had no idea what they were doing because they did know what they were doing, but they were unencumbered by classical ways that we did things. And so the network links, things like that, which ended up being very powerful, we used them in ways that I'm sure we never even thought we would. And I'm sort of, you know, classic GIS is very structured, right? We've done these things the same way we've done them since ArcInfo was created on some prime microcomputer back in 1982, right?
Right.
I mean, a build is a build, a buffer is a buffer, and a clip is a clip. Um, you know, that's and it's hard to break out of that. I mean, you've been working a little bit more with Mapbox's GIS system. Do they approach these things differently than how we've done this all these years, or do they just say this a clip is a clip and that's how you do it?
Well, the interesting thing about Mapbox from a marketing perspective is how much geospatial functionality do you have to put out there to appeal to a traditional GIS geospatial customer without without clouding your main message of ease of use, ease of getting your data on a map, right? And
Yeah.
to all different types of devices. Um, and the idea of, I mean, we joked about hexagonal binning in the browser, et cetera. And the idea is, hey, point and polygon, you know, convex hull, and hex bins is those three GIS things cover 80% of your use cases.
Yeah.
And if you're doing anything more complicated, well, you probably already have technology, a technology stack that addresses those thornier problems. So I think the idea, you know, going forward, the traditional GIS industry is going to own less and less of those more generic dominant use cases. And the only time you'll be firing up a desktop GIS is when you need to do something fairly sophisticated. right? So the
Yeah.
idea of, hey, I can just do a point and poly in my browser. So, I'm going to drag the data, drag my spreadsheet onto my browser. There's going to be a map there. I can hit a button. There's my heat map. Hit print. I'm done,
Yeah.
right? And that's a whole lot of what people do with maps. But the marketing challenge though is how do you emphasize that ease of use while still be giving enough knobs and dials to the traditional GIS customer who wants as many knobs and dials as possible? Because God knows Bob in engineering uses this one knob every 4 years, and you're like, Bob, that you have an engineering package that does that. Why
Yeah.
do you want to do why do you want to do that in your browser, Bob?
Well, the old joke is the product manager for ArcGIS never said no to a new toolbar. Right? I mean, it's just created. You just created a toolbar. That's problem solved.
And I love QGIS. It's the first thing I fire up, but in the toolbar wars, they have a lot of gunpowder too.
And theirs are like big buttons too. There's huge things. It feels like I like the QGIS guys, so they always get a little defensive when I say this. But it's like an old Windows like 3.1.1 application where every dialogue had like a little like icon on it.
Right, and it's almost, yeah. And for those of us who've been working with desktop software for years, it's almost like, guess what this icon does before you mouse over it. And I think the next progression in desktop software is to take all that underlying functionality, but totally rethink the interface on top.
Yeah.
Because it's still the fact that the desktop GIS system is the point of entry for the next generation of geospatially minded students. I mean, it's we're pushing people in the deep end of the pool, and it's so difficult to do the most basic things. And that's why I say there's a huge market opportunity for those who can simplify, the three or four things that are 80% of what we do every day.
Yeah. I mean, we're hiring some GIS people, and we've been going through a hiring process, and um, it's hard to find. I mean, it's easy to find people that know how to use GIS, have a graduated degree in GIS. It's hard to find people that have that want to make this. Don't want to be more than a button pusher, right? How do I do this thing that was 15 steps? How do I make it 3 steps? How do I logically string these things together? How do I improve the user interface? It's a little disappointing, and I don't want to blame like universities for this because maybe it's not their fault, but I guess I'm not inspired by recent graduates in GIS. It doesn't seem like anybody's making this jump to the next level. You got all these new, people have tablets and mobile devices, and people should be thinking about these things in different ways, but they're being taught exactly what was being taught 15 years ago.
No,
It's hard to jump, and it's hard. And from Esri's standpoint or QGIS' standpoint, they don't want to create a new UI because all these users are going to be like, "Whoa, where'd all my toolbars go?"
right. There has to be some, yeah, custom skinning or some sort of interface, overhaul. But the industry, and by the industry, I definitely include the academic arm of the industry. The sunk costs are so enormous, right? And then my other suspicion is that you talk about stringing functions together. It's when you start looking at like a platform like R and R Studio,
Yeah.
and how much progress has been made in the manipulation and display of data, including geospatial data. It's at what point do we talk about R Studio as a GIS interface and be reaching a whole different analytically minded audience that's not coming with the baggage of traditional GIS training, and I think that that trend is very real.
Well, absolutely. And the question is, whose responsibility is to break this? Is it university's responsibility to teach it differently? Is it, Jack's responsibility to say, we've done a great job, now I'm going to change the way we all do something? Or is it a community responsibility where we sort of ooze into some future direction pulled by maybe the guys with Mapbox and CartoDB are doing, away from, classic GIS? Somebody's got to take responsibility, right?
Well, it's the classic GIS conundrum, right? We're the niche technology that refuses to be absorbed by IT, and then we complain when IT departments are underutilizing GIS, right? And and we're the silo that refuses to call itself a silo. I mean, we're the ones who can visually break down all the other silos, and yet we have so many of the characteristics of being a particularly hard to deal with silo ourselves, right? And
Yeah, we
so
want to control the process.
exactly, and it gets back to, since Paul Ramsey is commenting profusely on my love of Google Earth, it gets back to Paul Ramsey's formulation of spatial IT, right?
Yeah.
When does spatial become better integrated into IT versus a set of a GIS department that is always living aside and down the hall from the regular IT guys?
Yeah, in a way, I've been sort of lucky, coming back to a large A&E after about 15 years.
Right.
I actually am able to see change. So when I left URS back in 2002, GIS was extremely siloed, right? You had engineers that did engineering, you had planners that did planning, and then you had this group in the corner upstairs behind a door. The door was always closed. It said knock before entering. That was a GIS department. And we were behind that door, and we did what we wanted to do, and we wanted people to come in and kind of bow their heads and, please,
Right,
Mr.
right,
GIS
right,
person, will you help me with my map today?
right. Pay homage to our plotter.
Yeah, coming back, I've noticed a couple things. One, the same two plotters that were there when I left are still there because no one
HP,
plots
baby.
anymore.
That's the only right outside ESRI. The only people making money are the HP Plotter Inc. sales guys.
Yeah.
They're killing it, bro.
Yeah, because they don't buy a new one. And the other thing is, ArcGIS is on a lot more people's desktops. I mean, we're an office of 200 something people. I mean, I'd say 50, 60 people have it. They're not doing GIS. They're just doing things to get their work done.
Right. It's their glorified browser, right? Because by definition, if you're opening up a desktop GIS once every 2 or 3 weeks, it's how much are you doing really, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a huge learning curve. Since you talked about our engineering and your sector of the world, how about Harris and Excelis teaming up?
Yeah. Well, that's big in your world.
Or in terms of?
In terms of, isn't Excelis DC or Denver? I mean,
are they?
I don't know. Everyone's in Denver. I guess I assume everyone's big in Denver.
They're probably down in the tech center.
Yeah. So data is hard. I mean, we dealt this with at WeoGeo, right? Data is something that people want to. If you can sell it to somebody, they'll convince someone they need to pay a whole lot of money for it. They will. But most people, they see. How can I go out of my way not to spend $1 on a piece of data? I think as these companies get bigger and start controlling more of the data, they're able to, they have less competitors. You can go to so-and-so to get information and so-and-so to get whatever. You can, you're sort of locked in, right? I mean, airlines, right? I don't know. I mean, I travel a lot. Airfares aren't going down because these airlines are merging.
Right. Well, and remember that was the huge downfall of the mom and pop GIS consulting industry in the early 2000s, right? Once the engineering firms caught on that, hey, if we do all the spatial data management for the city of blase blah, population 50,000,
Yeah.
when they need to get their on ramp to the interstate redesigned, well, here we are, and we already have the data because we managed that critical infrastructure, that data infrastructure. And once the big engineering firms realized that spatial data management and display could be a great loss leader to get the actual hands-on engineering and construction work where the real money is, that so many smaller shops who just did GIS got pushed out.
Yeah. It's probably more the medium shops because smaller. You can always work with a small business, right? It never hurts to have a small business. It's the ones that don't qualify to be small businesses, but are not big enough to be, the big companies of the world. Those are the ones you don't see anymore. The 50-person firms.
Right. Yeah, that's the hardest. Well, yeah, 50-person companies are the hardest companies to manage. Once you get above 15 or 20 employees, that 20 to 50 person size company, it's a nightmare because you have so many kind of medium to big company problems, but you don't have resources, right?
Yeah.
And so either you stay really small or you figure out how to get big. So you do have an HR handbook, right? And it's funny. I was at a data meetup the other night in Boulder. So this really hip web design firm of, I don't know, 30, 40 people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they did a data analysis. They went through their chat logs, internal chat logs, and they counted how many times the F word was used in the internal chat. And then they graphed the different people, right? And so the presentation is like, oh, isn't this a funny way of analyzing data, blah, blah, blah. And so somebody raises their hand. What does your HR officer think of this? and the presenter was like, she said, we don't have an HR officer.
Well,
And
there
it's
you
like,
go.
bingo, welcome to lawsuit heaven. It's like
Yeah.
I
No.
almost want to apply for a job there just so I could sue them.
Yeah. I mean, you take the next decade off. Not a problem. Oh. Well, I mean, so being a VB6 guy,
Yes.
what does a VB6 guy do in 2015?
Hey, James. Yeah, okay. So this week I celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Timoney Group, right? And
I didn't get an invite to the big party, but
yeah, well, yeah. The next time you're in town, I'll buy you a plate of
oh, it was.
nachos.
Oh, I figured you had it in Hawaii or something like that.
Yeah, the getaway, right? Um, if I had to do it all over again, I would buy a food truck, tear out all the cooking implements inside the food truck, put in a plotter and a couple PCs, and I would paint my truck green with the Excel logo, and I would just drive around to office parks and be the Excel guy. Because if you got the word out that like you're the Excel macro guy
Yeah.
who does house calls, like you could make mad cash and like work and set your own hours. I mean, Excel macros and Microsoft realizes this. The amount of intellectual property or value that corporate America has invested in Excel VBA macros, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. So if I had to do it all over again, I'd just be like the VBA guy who can make a map occasionally.
Where I need to, a little 3D chart. Interesting.
Right, exactly. That's the downside. Then they want tilted 3D pie charts, right? And I have to have my pie chart rage get triggered over and over again.
Well, you know all the tricks. Well, you do, so you know now. So it's interesting. We're also hiring some programmers, and the amount of programmers that list VB6 as a skill set on their resumes is still quite high. I don't know if that's just out of date resumes or people actually
I
really still market their VB.
No, I think that's a way of saying you're over 35 because it's like right under 30, it's all Ruby, right? Ruby and Java, and maybe like, oh, I'm an Objective C guy, right? Because they made an app once, but
Yeah,
yeah, no, just say like, right. It's saying like, hey, I'm the PHP guy. You want to hire me? And obviously there's work in PHP, but you're kind of automatically dating yourself.
yeah. Well, we were arguing about this the other day. Is HTML a programming language?
Yes. Well, okay, okay. I used to laugh when people put CSS on their resume.
Yeah,
And the idea of, especially in the mobile bootstrap kind of world, the idea of it's funny until you've spent a day troubleshooting CSS, right? And
absolutely.
and it doesn't look right on the screen is now it doesn't look right on my tablet. It doesn't look right on my phone. Oh, which phone do you have? I'm Android. Which Android phone do you have? Right? And so the idea of you all laugh at HTML. I would put HTML5, of course, right? That's how you market it.
Well, that's hipper, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
HTML4. I mean,
And but yeah, anyone, yeah, you can. A lot of us have lost whole days of our lives to niggling CSS issues and HTML5 uh, standards that aren't uniformly adopted across all different browsers, etc.
yeah. Well, most of the reason we were saying is it's not a language is because to me you don't program it. It's a visualization of something else, right? I mean, that was my take on whether it's a programming language or not. And would you list as a language? I mean, but your point on CSS is, of course, you say language is known, and they list C++, C Sharp, PHP, maybe Python or Perl, maybe some of this, that, and then HTML,
And
or you see something like HyperCard or
well, okay, look at it the different way. Look how many people are involved with web content who only know how to change and modify web content through a content management system. And if they were to hit view source and see HTML, they'd be completely bewildered.
yeah,
So
like
the
what the hell
idea
happened?
of knowing how that works and be able to, handcraft some fine artisanal HTML,
Yeah,
that's a valuable skill set. Although I did have a recent college graduate email me the other day, and he wanted some advice about the industry, blah blah blah, and he had reference to Python on his resume, but Python within the Esri context. So I said that's fine, but if you have Python skills outside the Esri context, figure out a way to highlight them. And I said, what about JavaScript? And I was writing this email, at the coffee shop on Saturday morning. I said, if you don't know JavaScript as a college graduate, like you need to start now. And I said, literally, like right now, like this weekend, like go on Khan Academy, go on Code Academy, whatever. But the idea of if you're looking for a job in tech and have no exposure to even the most basic JavaScript, it's not your skills that are the issue. It's the ability that you are sending a signal that you might be wholly ignorant of much larger tech trends,
yeah.
right? So,
I've always been of the mindset it's easier to teach a programmer GIS than it is easier to teach a GIS person how to program. It's still the case, but that doesn't mean a GIS person can't learn programming when they're learning Python and learning other things. I mean, it's just another skill set. I will say, getting resumes for programmers, people are highlighting Node as much as they can. So there is great hope in the programming world for.
But of course, does it come back to the Ruby thing, right? Because we have a skills mismatch between kind of like the hot new technologies, and if you were starting a company today, what technology stack would you use, versus, like, frankly, James, you have the cool new project, but you have a half dozen legacy projects that actually bring in good money that require legacy type technology.
VB.net, baby.
And oh, .net. Wow, right.
Yeah, there's a lot of money still in VB.net, as much as I dislike it, but I actually don't touch it anymore. So
and so yeah, so you kind of like, okay, if you're in your 20s, do you really want to invest time learning these legacy technologies that can get you a job, but it might not be a job that will lead to the kind of career growth you're interested in? And versus, if you're in mid-career, then babysitting some legacy government contracting projects, well, that's as good a way as any to pay the mortgage. So that I think and that's why GIS job postings are so horrible to look at, right? Because it's basically every language and technology for the last 20 years listed on there, because all their projects that they're billable on cover such a broad range of deployments.
Sadly, yes, and that's interesting. I mean, GIS is one of those industries where it's tip of the spear, and it's also like the butt of the sword. You get to do such amazing things with new programming languages and new philosophies and new technology. Yet, down at the other end of that sword, there's this big meaty part that still has, we still have applications we're working with that have ArcIMS server running, if you can imagine that.
What do you mean, can I imagine that? The North Dakota Oil and Gas Commission, North Dakota, one of the largest producers of oil in the country, their mapping site runs off of ArcIMS. And if there is a organization that should have had the money to upgrade, it would be them. But so it doesn't surprise me in the least that these platforms are out there. But it's where do practitioners, where are they going to invest their time? And we were joking before we came on the air about data science, right? And it's kind of like this vague buzzword that can mean a million different things. But the idea of, as a buzzword, data science has the attention of upper level executives of, hey, this is something the practitioners, people with this training, can tell me something I don't already know.
Yeah.
Whereas, is GIS a buzzword inside the enterprise, or is it a buzzkill? That's the rhetorical question I leave you with on a Friday afternoon.
Yes.
All the above, right?
As somebody who did a lot of GIS in the 90s, I find myself apologizing for work I did in the past. Wasn't intentional. It just, I could blame vendors for it, but it's just, we did things that we thought were a good idea, and part of it's a learning curve, right? Just because you can make ArcGIS in the browser doesn't mean you should.
Well, and this is what I'll say is, within the statistics and data science community, you are seeing a good discussion of, you have these complicated algorithms that seem appropriate for a time and place, yet they're not sustainable over time, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea of GIS traditionally has been the king of over-engineered, complicated solutions that seem to solve an immediate problem and yet give rise to a whole slew of other problems very soon as you move down the road, right? And that either creates a dependence on the contractor, which or the vendor, which may or may not be unintentional, or that creates a huge turnoff in perception of what does this domain really provide the larger enterprise.
I I have I think I'm full of hope, and the hope is we're starting to get away. I mean, we're moving slowly, but we could take SDE for a perfect example of something that existed that we spent a lot of money fixing that didn't need to exist in the first place. But it doesn't exist anymore, right? We have either Esri has seen the light and removed it, or they listened to their customers and removed it, or it was just so hard to maintain it wasn't worth maintaining. I don't care which of those.
It was created to solve a serious problem of storing spatial data in a relational database. Now, the idea is, as the major databases acquired spatial capability, where did SDE fit in? And as we've talked about before, the industry has so many legacy applications to maintain that, for all I know, ESRI wanted to kill it off 6 years ago.
Yeah.
But, people were still had their old SQL Server, or they didn't even want to bother with whatever SQL Server spatial capabilities there were.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. But the fact that we can get rid of that thing, for whatever reason, is a good thing. Can we get rid of Open Layers 2 and all these other legacy applications out there? Maybe, maybe not. But
or can we re-engineer simpler ways to solve the problems they were created to solve? And again, the Open Layers project is a great example of it became so overfreighted with functionality, and yet each piece of functionality somebody needed to put inside the browser. And then the cumulative effect was a very heavy piece of technology, and then Leaflet comes in and Vlad says, this is what it does, this is what it doesn't do. And the this is what it doesn't do ended up being critically important for the overall usability and accelerated the adoption of that project. And so if anything, we need to be more assertive. This is what you should be doing, and this is what you shouldn't be doing. So that's you had that example. You had that example where the client wanted a web mapping platform, but they wanted multiple projections. They wanted the ability to display different projections.
Well, partly was it went above the 85th parallel, or it was a North Pole thing, and trying to figure out how to reproject on the fly. And it's the answer is you got to use a globe. That was the answer.
No, bro, you use WebGL and D3, man, and you are set.
So yeah, the answer is yes, but it became a UI nightmare for users moving along, and all of a sudden the projection changes, and they're like, "Whoa, I'm now panning to the right." You're right. I mean, and that's just a good point. I mean, there's so many ways to do something, but in the end, it's what makes best sense for the users. I hate using globes in a browser. I mean, don't get me wrong, but that was the only reason. That was the only way to pan above the 85th parallel and still not lose your mind.
No, yeah, absolutely. Although the CartoDB guys send me a tweet saying they do all sorts of different projections for web mapping, etc. So I'm sure somebody's working on the problem.
Yeah, well, Leaflet I think only supports native or WGSA4. I almost called it projection. Google. 90913, and I don't know what 90913. What do they call that? I don't even. What do I be doing?
900-913.
Yeah.
Also, but that's not even EPSG code 3857.
I like the leet speak one though.
Yeah, no. So that needs to be your job interview question, like the icebreaker. Like the person sits down, hey, what's your favorite EPSG code and why? What does
What's old Hawaiian's EPSG?
what does EPSG stand for?
Yeah, those euros and their stupid codes. It always figures though, petroleum industry would create such a thing though.
I once had a petroleum client who proudly told me that his company had 40 or 50 different projects spread across North America, and he created custom UTM projections for each project so he could run the central meridian of his custom projection through that particular project area. And like he was immensely proud that he had 40 projects and 40 different projection systems.
Guys that can do that, that's their thing. That is, they want to do that though.
Oh, right, because it's job security, right? No one can fire the guy who created the custom projections.
Right. Math? Oh my goodness, no. You're whatever money you need, you can stay.
Right.
Oh goodness, holy cow! Where'd the hour go?
Wow. Well, good. I appreciate everyone's good feedback online, and I'm glad to get season 3 off to a great start.
Premiered with you, Brian. I mean, that's
well, I consider you the Lena Dunham of GIS webcasting. Such a creative talent who's willing to put himself out there, quote unquote.
Right. Well, willing to prove that I don't know anything about anything. If I talk long enough, you'll pretty much assume I don't know anything about anything.
Bro, you're a project manager, man. You see the big picture.
Right. I don't work anymore. I'm a non-working supervisor.
Right. I just
business development.
There you go. Golf. Right.
Yeah. It totally needs an Angular Go thing here. I don't know what that means, but I saw it on Engadget the other night. So
no, React, the JavaScript library React. That's the one I'm sprinkling in judiciously to my chatter.
You're a Facebook guy?
Yeah.
It's like anything. People get excited about something like Angular, and all of a sudden they realize, oh my goodness, this thing slows the browser down. I don't like it anymore.
And it's another layer to maintain and figure out what's what, right?
Yeah, a coder of mine always says, if you can do it all on the server and nothing on the client, things just work better. And there's something about
that. That's heretical in 2015.
I know it totally is, but I get his point though. I get his point.
Right, but even
Chrome becomes, when I go up, on Mac, you can pull down a little battery bar, and you can see what applications are using up. If I go there right now, it'll say Chrome. Yeah. Apps using significant energy. Google Talk plugin, Google Chrome. I mean, the browser is a beast, my friend.
And it's the new operating system, right?
Yeah, well, that's why my fan is pegged right now, my computer. Well, everybody, thank you for joining. Next week, we have Paul Ramsey of CartoDB now.
And Paul will discuss how much he likes spinning globes as an interface choice for the general user.
Yes, we will get him to give his feelings on using Google Earth for geospatial problem solving. And I've gotten plenty of feedback. People prefer IRC for talking, so I will spin up the IRC. Apparently Twitter is too hipster for people, so I will get the IRC going. You're shaking your head, I know, but I think people just want us, talk, and they don't really want to listen to us. They just want to get on there.
And we know who you are in IRC. Don't even pretend.
We're background noise, so they don't.
Anonymity, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. You all have a great weekend, and remember, next week, same time, Paul Ramsey. Take care, everybody. Bye.